morning. I'm Andrew Whaley. A couple of weeks ago, I was leaving worship, and as I was headed out of the gathering area outside, one of our congregants was coming down the steps out of the chapel. She had been worshiping in there where we have a simulcast of the 11 o'clock service that's happening live here in the sanctuary, and she told me that she'd been worshiping in there for the last couple of weeks, even with other people around. And she told me, I know I'm watching you all from the sanctuary. It's the same feed as it is if I'm watching it at home. But I find that when I try to live stream worship and participate from home, I'm so easily distracted. The dog wants to be let outside or let back in from outside. There's towels that need to be folded. I check my phone for text messages or check the news. It's just easy to focus on something other than encountering God in worship. And so in the chapel, I find myself able to remain focused. I'm here, I'm in this room that has been created for the encounter of God with us, and I'm accountable to the other people sitting around me. I don't want them to catch me looking at my phone during worship. And so it has made me wonder, how is it that we bring ourselves to attention? How do we bring ourselves to attention before a holy God and find ourselves dumbstruck before the Almighty? I want you to hear these words today from 1 Peter 2, verses 1 through 5. Rid yourself, therefore, of all malice and all guile, insincerity, envy, and all slander. Like newborn infants, long for the pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow into salvation, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. Come to him, a living stone, though rejected by mortals, yet chosen and precious in God's sight. And like living stones, let yourselves be built into a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Now, it's true, if you've been a Christian long, you know this, it's true that Christianity has never required a specific geographic site, a city, a temple, something like that. The earliest Christian gatherings actually took place in people's homes, people who had a large enough house to gather a group of people. They would be the host of the church. They met in homes. Later, during times of oppression, Christians would meet in the catacombs, underground, or they'd meet in secret. They'd meet outdoors. The church has always been formed by the people. The word church itself comes from the Greek word ekklesia, which is from a Greek verb that means to call out. The church, therefore, are the ones who are called out from among the people into service of God in the grace of Jesus Christ. The church is always the community. You read any of Paul's letters and you know the community of the people of the church is what is so important. It's not really until Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire in the 4th century that sanctuaries, temples begin to look like something that we associate with church today. They were converted from Roman temples into Christian churches, and then that became the model for future churches and cathedrals that were built throughout Europe. At the same time, though, while the church is the called out community, there's also places all over Scripture and in our history where place and location matters deeply, especially coming out of the Jewish heritage of Christianity. There's places that become marked as places of divine encounter. Jacob sees the stairway to heaven with the angels ascending and descending. He names that place Bethel. When Abraham takes his son Isaac up the mountain, commanded by God to sacrifice him, yet the Lord provides a ram at the last minute before the knife falls. Abraham names that place Jehovah-Jireh. The Lord will provide, a place of divine revelation and encounter. Then, of course, we have the temple in Jerusalem, Jerusalem established by King David, the temple built by his son Solomon. After the Babylonian exile, the synagogue becomes the place where the Jewish people gather for worship. And then, of course, there's all the place names in the Bible. Sinai, where Moses receives the 10 Commandments. Bethlehem, where David comes from, and later Jesus. Jerusalem, the capital city. The region of Galilee, where Jesus begins his ministry. the church in Antioch or in Philippi. Specific locations, places do matter. They are where we are, who we're with, when we encounter a holy God. And so today I'm in our sanctuary. I'm standing in front of our stained glass windows. We've been working on a project to do some restoration and refurbishment work on our windows. They've been here about 70 years now, and some of them are in need of repair. So I can tell you now all about braces that support stained glass, the age of lead, and how the solders join. And you can see, this is our worst one right here, the bowing in the window itself that comes from heat and the bending of the lead over time. You've got to repair that, and it's really, really expensive. So this raises the question, right? It's expensive. Why not just take it out? Take out the stained glass, replace it with clear glass. It's a lot cheaper to maintain, lets in natural light. We can see the world that God has called us to serve outside of our church walls themselves. Those are all good reasons. You see churches that have all of that clear glass. But I would contend that stained glass also gives our minds a place for holy wandering. I'm sure that parishioner I talked to on the way out of worship does pay better attention to the service when she's sitting in the chapel watching the simulcast than sitting at home watching on her iPad. But I bet she still has her mind wander from time to time. We all do. What things like stained glass windows do for us, or a communion table, or a cross, or a baptismal font, is they give our minds a place to wander in a holy direction. Instead of pulling out our phone, or working on the grocery list, or folding the towels, or thinking about the weeds that need to be pulled, we find ourselves staring at a window, and we're on the banks of the Jordan River, watching Jesus be baptized and declared as God's beloved Son. We consider our own lives as those who are buried with him in baptism, as our window states. And all of a sudden, we're a part of the story. All of a sudden, we're the recipients of a theophany. All of a sudden, the living God is encountering us in a moment of holy mind wandering. We also have each other to look at. Pews that we sit in. We might remember those who've sat here before us. We might give thanks for the person across from us, someone we may have known for years, someone we may not really know all that well, and we marvel simply at the fact that here we are in this place, facing this same direction toward the triune God in worship. Of all the things we could be doing, here we are. These can be sacred revelations, as sanctified as anything that is said from a pulpit. Picture and color and story, where the transcendent comes close. We stand before the maker of all, and we remember who we are, and we know in our core that we are loved. Y'all know this. This has become ramped up even more in the pandemic. We live in a culture that says you've got to be more productive. You've got to be more vigilant, more irate, more attentive, more organized. You need to be better at homeschooling. You need to be better parents. You need to be a better spouse. You need to be a more active and engaged and better citizen. You need, you must, you ought, you should be more. All the time we hear it. Maybe more now than ever. And I think we need a break. I think we need a place for holy mind wandering. A break to meet the God who loves us, who delights in us, who comes to us on sacred ground and turns us into living stones, so that together we become the temple of the divine.